So today we're learning the mimer here. I browsed through the rest of the mimer. It's real deep chassidus. So here I have two deep thinkers. So it's right up your alley. I mean, if you want deep chassidus, it's coming up. I can tell you that. Let's go. So the Rebbe here, the Rashab, is talking about this idea. How do you reconcile multiplicity and oneness? And this is at the core of Yiddishkeit. This isn't just at the core of Chassidus. Any Yid, and every Yid that's a Maimon, and every Jew we believe is a believer, has to ask themselves a simple question. We have a world out there with details, compartments, and at the same time we say Hashem Echad, God is one. How do the two go together? That's a simple question. It's way before Chassidus started. Avram asked that question. When we say Avram taught monotheism, Hillel, what do you think? What do you think was bothering him that he taught monotheism? It wasn't just that his father was an idol worshiper, Terach. No, it was because in his own mind he had a question. In other words, even though he thought idols are ridiculous, it's still a question. Teva, nature, and L'mayla Teva and transcendence of nature, how do they go together? And we are in a Teva world. We're not angels. We're not neshamas. We're neshamas in a guf, in a body. So for us, this is the reality. Chassidus calls this das tachton, the lower level, right? There's das elyon, the higher level, and the lower level. So this is you could say the question that Chassidus grapples with throughout its 250 years. This idea, and when you hear Hillel, the Kamarna or the Lechovich or the Slonimer speak about Einoid Milvadoi, this is exactly what they're identifying. They have their spin on it. And they don't use it, they use another style than Chabad. Kamarna is a little different, but I'm saying this is at the root of Torah, and Chassidus, the Baal Shem Tov, sees this as a mainstay for Torah. Let me say this. In order to be excited, to learn Torah, and what the literature call the steig in Torah, right? You have to believe. If you don't believe, then the Torah is like lahavdil galach, a priest learning Torah, or a educated professor at university teaching a piece of Talmud. It has nothing to do with kedusha. It has nothing to do with holiness. It's a good piece of law, not secular law, Jewish law. Argumentation, dissertation. So comes along the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, the holy Baal Shem Tov, and he introduces it to the Yiddish world, the Jewish world, that these ideas are integral to belief in God and belief in His Torah and belief in the world and belief in the Jewish people. And barring an understanding of it, then it can fizzle out. When you understand and your mind is as excited, this is already the Chabad approach, you're as excited intellectually, then together with the emotional feeling, they come together and they create a wholesome, healthy truth and self where there's a balance between right and wrong, ups and downs, inspiration and frustration. Then a person is able to walk the world and deal with the world in a way that he doesn't get, we say in Yiddish, zerkratzt. There's no English translation of the word, but it's a great word. Hillel, you should learn this word. Zerkratzt. Zerkratzt. Kratz literally means itchy.
I could use it, yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
It's a kratz means you get bothered and fathered. It's not good. It's terrible. Hey, what's going to be? Mandani is running New York City. We have to all run out. We get sekratzt. Don't get sekratzt. There's a God. There's a Eibishter. So the Baal Shem Tov planted through Chassidus this idea. The Alter Rebbe took the Baal Shem Tov's message as the Kudah, and he brought it into Chochmah Bina Das. And the Rashab, as a continuation of the Alter Rebbe, seeks to explain this further. So let's learn now. Page 168. V'im kein yesh kam beis devorim. Shenoisi haribui, that Hashem possesses the multiplicity. V'kulam b'bchinas ha'achdus the yochid mamish. And all are in a state of absolute singularity. V'his galus yesh lo'ima shel yidei shem havaya v'shem elikim. Now let me tell you what the Rashab is saying here. He's saying like this: if you only begin with Yud-Kei Vav-Kei and Elokim, then you have a contradiction between multiplicity and singularity. But if you understand God as what we use the word in English, transcendent, God, Hillel's transcendent also of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is already a form and definition. The Yud is Chochmah, the Kei is Bina, and then there's the Midos, and then the Malchus. In other words, there's a description and a definition. God's beyond description. So that's what our Rashab says. And look here. V'his galus, the revelation of this uniquely paradoxical state of being within creation comes about through the function of both God's name Havaya and name Elokim. So you see what he's doing here? He's telling you that Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is also a function. So who's God? What's God? Transcendence. In Hebrew, in the Lashon of Chabad Chassidus, Atzmus. Velvu, Atzmus. And it's so interesting that out of all the Rabbeim, the Rebbe, our Rebbe, was the one that made this word and name be a commonplace in the annals of Chabad Chassidus by the average Chassid today. If you look into Atzmus, which comes from the word etzem, but Atzmus refers to transcendence, even transcending Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Again, you find it already alluded to in the Alter Rebbe. Everything starts with the Alter Rebbe, of course, and then the Mittler Rebbe and the Rebbe Rashab. The Rashab also spends a lot of time on Atzmus. A lot. But the Rebbe, I think, takes the cake. Because what the Rebbe did is, he brought Atzmus into the commoner. That's a big chiddush. The Rebbe always said like this. He said that the Alter Rebbe said, I don't want your Gan Eden, your upper Gan Eden. I don't want your lower Gan Eden. I just want you yourself. Right? And the Tzemach Tzedek brings this in Derech Mitzvah, and the Tzemach Tzedek writes that his grandfather, the Alter Rebbe, would say this, Bitvei Kusoi. Velvu, that's the Lashon in Derech Mitzvah, Bitvei Kusoi. In other words, when the Alter Rebbe was in a state of Dveikus, which I don't know what that means, but I hear it. The Alter Rebbe was a state of Dveikus. And in that state of Dveikus, what did he say? He says, God, I can have you Gan Eden, your upper, your lower, but it doesn't interest me. I want you. You. The Rebbe in 1971 in the Test Tu B'Shvat said a Maimer B'Yom HaShtei Yosar. It's a must study. It's out, I think, even in English today. Or he brings the medrash of the the deputies of the king, that the king invites them to the palace and they follow the king back. And as they go through the palace, they see the room of art, culture, wealth, and one veers to the right and one veers. He says to the king, you can go on, I'll catch up to you. I gotta see this, I've never seen such art. Goes into the room of art, he never comes out. He has the art. What does he need a king for? He has the art. Says the Medrash, Pikachoya, there was one bright fellow, a sharp-shrewd fellow, and he did not go into any of the sidebar rooms, but he went straight following the king, and only he got into the chambers of the king. Because all the art and all the culture and all the are all what we call fascinations. In Chabad terminology, giluyim, revelations, a gilui. The Pikach said, I want you yourself. The Alter Rebbe said, I want you, Hashem. I don't want any of these angels and souls and Gan Eden. They're all great stuff, but I want you. The Rashab is saying over here, the way Atzmus is Nizgale, the way Atzmus reveals itself, he uses the function both of Yud-Kei, Vav-Kei, and Elokim. And that's a very deep concept, which answers really the question. In other words, to reconcile Yud-Kei, Vav-Kei, and Elokim is a problem. But if God is beyond Yud-Kei, Vav-Kei, God is transcendent, then Yud-Kei, Vav-Kei, and Elokim are both functions of God, not God. God is Echad. Yud-Kei, Vav-Kei is not Echad. So this is, I believe, what he's introducing here. Let's continue. Let's see how he develops it. Hillel, is that clear what I said? It makes sense?
Yeah.
Velvel, you follow?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Of course.
Okay. The Hashem Elikim Megale es ha'aribui. What's the function of the name Elokim? It is to reveal multiplicity. Its job is that there should be multiplicity of created beings without an end or a measure. That's Elokim. What is the function of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei? Shem Hashem, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, Megale, it reveals Pchinas Ha'achdus. It reveals the oneness. You hear that word? It's not oneness. You hear that, Hillel? It reveals oneness. There's a difference between it revealing oneness and it being oneness. Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is not oneness. It's a revelation of oneness. It's a function that brings out the oneness, within the Atzmus. Shekol HaMadregas Pratis, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei reveals that all the particular levels of existence, Hein bin Atzolim, both the realms of the emanated, Atzilus, Netzolim, Veheim bin Ivroyim, and whether they be the creatures, the Nevroyim, Bria. Look over here at the note, it's good note to learn. The two terms used, this is by the Rebbe Rashab, the notes he's referring to Netzolim and Nevroyim. Those two terms refer to two levels of existence, one in which godly attributes exist, but do not feel separate from him. They are referred to as his emanations, the realm of Atzilus. So right here you have a definition of what Atzilus is. What does Chabad Hasidus mean by Atzilus? And the second, referred to as creatures, Nivroim, entities who feel separate. You hear that? They feel separate and have a sense of self-identity. Bria and the realms below it. So here you have a good brief description of the difference between Atzilus and Bria and lower, Netzolim and Nivroim. Hillel, you with us? Let's go. Misachdim u'miskalali b'bchinas hayichud diyochid, and they become unified because in the experience of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, they become unified and included in the oneness of God's absolute singularity. B'bchinas hayichud diyochid. Shari b'protim heimechad mamish. They become that all manifold particulars become one. You see this words? Baruch Hashem. Barashikivanti. Here he used the word Atzmus. He hasn't used this word till now, but that's why I said earlier. It's reveals. You see, look. His name Havaya reveals the singularity within his essence, enabling it to permeate all existence. That's what Yud Kei Vav Kei does. This will explain. We say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. The famous question, it should have said Hashem Yochid, not Hashem Echad, Hashem Yochid, the term that refers to absolute singularity. Shemoid al Achdus Yosem Echad, Yochid is a greater degree of unity than that of Echad. And let's read the note just for the sake of clarity. Echad, one, could be seen as the first number in a sequence. Thus, Echad, Shtayim, Shlosh. Thus, it reflects a oneness that leaves room for the conception of other entities. Conversely, Yochid implies singular uniqueness, that there's nothing else similar to the entity described. This is an apt description of Hashem, for He alone is true existence, the only entity who is in an absolute sense. To quote Rabbi Yosef Alboy, and this answers your question, Hillel, who is He? Look over here, it's a Sefer Ikorim Maimer. So the author is Yosef Alboy. Okay? His existence must be, that is, his existence is from his self and is not the result of any other cause which preceded him. Who made God? Who made God? Velvel, you have an answer? Who made God? No one made God. He made himself. That's why he's God. Who made me? Who made you? Our parents, Hashem. We have, right? Who made the angels? There's an answer. There's a source. Who made God? Hashem, Atzmus? It's an oxymoron. The question is an oxymoron. It contradicts each other. Who made God is a contradiction. That means you don't understand what God is. God is an independent entity outside of being made. Yochid denotes that. Echad denotes one, then there's two and three. So l'chayra, seemingly, he should have used, instead of saying Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, it should have said Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Yochid. This cannot be said about any other entity that exists, not in this world and not in any of the spiritual realms. That's what I told you. Baruch Shikivanti, a second time, to Rabbi Tauger's note. Okay. So why Taka Hillel does it say Hashem Echad and not Hashem Yochid? The idea is, in truth, the be'emes Echad Zeh U'Prinas Yochid, this Echad that we refer to when we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, it really means Yochid. It's expressed through the words Echad, but refers to the concept of Yochid. Let's see how it says it. Concerning this verse, it says, there is one Echad, and with him there is no other. The Rebbe Rashab here, with these few words, look at the note, is expanding on the Midrash's, on Medrash's understanding of this verse. The Medrash could be interpreted as teaching merely that Hashem has no partner in creation. Right? You could say, Hashem Echad, Hashem is one, he has no partner. The Rashab is explaining that the intent is to understand the verse in its most literal sense. There is nothing else but him. Hillel, you hear the difference? When you say Hashem doesn't have another deity, that's one way of looking at the words Hashem Echad. But that's the simple, right? What the Rashab is adding, it's also based on Tanya Shari Yichud, the second section. Hashem Echad means there's nothing else. Not only that there's no other deity, there's nothing else in existence. It's all God. The intent of this word, echad, one, is not the intent that he's one in the sense of numeric progression, nor does it reflect the unification of diverse particles, particular elements, into a whole in a whole consisting of many particulars. This cannot be said. Because particulars are the multiplicity within the essence. Vashem Hashem, who is Galus, Prinas Hayichud Shabatzmus. And the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, as we said before, its function is to reveal the oneness, the singularity in God's essence. Im Kain hu b'prinas Yochid Mamish. Therefore, this word Echad really is the concept of Yochid, of singularity. Hello, however, but we don't say that. We say Hashem Echad, not Hashem Yochid. Why? When do you see the unity of God? When there is multiplicity. You understand, Hilo? In other words, it's like saying, I'm a holy guy on a mountain. Big deal. You have no one to deal with. You have no tivus. You have no... Go into the world and deal with the tivus and then show me that you're holding strong. Saying Hashem Yochid, and right? Big deal. Okay. Hashem Echad. There's a Dalit. 4 sides of the world. There's a Ches. There's tivus. There is Teva. And there itself you reveal the Atzmus. That's a Chiddush. And this, by the way, is part of... What?
Almost as if the Hishtalshalos, the multiplicity, is needed to trace back. You need to have contrast and perspective and so on in order to ultimately trace back.
Exactly.
Behind it.
Thank you. Hashem, so the Shem Hashem, as we mentioned earlier, unites everyone. He repeats now. If we would say this is pretty much what you said. We wouldn't know. This is what he's saying, what you just said now, Hilo. We wouldn't know if it said Yochid, we wouldn't know that it's talking about revealing the details. Instead, one might think that it refers to God's essence. Therefore it says Hashem Echad, that even after there was the revelation of the emanations of the created beings, with much multiplicity, nevertheless they all are unified in the oneness of the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei Yochid Mamish, to be actually one. God in essence is described as Yochid, or singularly unique. However, a superficial conception of that description would imply that he exists unto himself, and that all existence is, as it were, separate from him. God's name Havaya resolves that misconception, showing that even after the particular elements of existence were brought into being, they are not separate from him, nor even unified with him as significant entities, but rather subsumed in his singularity to the extent where their existence is not felt at all. All that is felt is him. The fact that the created beings feel their own identity is a misconception that comes as a result of the influence of God's name Elohim. Okay, we'll stop here, and next time let me just read the Kitzer. God's infinity contains within itself the potential for multiplicity, and it exists in an absolute singularity. The name of Hashem Elohim reveals multiplicity. Shem Hashem, the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, reveals the oneness of Yochid. Havaya Echad Achdus and Avraim b'Bchinas Yochid. The phrase Hashem Echad reflects the unity of all created beings, how in essence they are permeated by singularity of Yochid. Chevra, we'll see everyone tomorrow. B'Shem, seid gesund. Good learning.
I was going to make it tomorrow,
Okay,
but I'll
okay.
see you later.
Okay, sei gesund, Velvel and baby.